Oh, I think you'll like this one. Charles from the Charles Scott Gallery. He reached out to me and we were talking online. We thought, oh, this will be a fun video to do. And oh, was it fun? I think you're really going to enjoy this perspective from Charles. And thanks to everyone that's given some positive feedback to this video series so far. I hope to do many more of these. I enjoy talking cells, and thanks to everyone that's reached out. I've had great conversations and given us a lot of great leads of things we could be doing in the future. So please enjoy Charles from the Charles Scott Gallery. Right before we wanted to start here with Charles from the Charles Scott Gallery, we're kind of making fun of the idea that we don't really know anyone in real life that will talk cells with us. So this is kind of one of those fun moments where you get to geek out with a fellow cell collector. But I'm nowhere in comparison to you. I was looking at your eBay listings and you're like in the tens of thousands listed. You are legit. Let's talk about the Charles Scott Gallery. How many
Sure.
different pieces of art do you have listed for sale right now?
So we have around 6,000.
Wow.
Yeah, and obviously, what's been interesting as the years have gone on, it's sort of challenging to keep that number up because, like, happily, people are into it, things sell. But the real horrifying secret of the Charles Scott Gallery is that most of our art is not up for sale
Oh,
because I spent years buying. And so nowadays, much of our modus operandi is we've actually outsourced. We have companies scanning thousands of pieces of art every month, which then we have other people put up for sale. So,
wow. How long have you been doing this for?
well, I personally started collecting in around 1990, and it was funny because at one point, I actually early on in the internet, I put my personal collection up as a website just so I could see it. Because my theory used to be, why frame anything when you could buy more art, when you can spend that money on more art? So, at one point, uh, people started contacting me on this website and saying, can I buy that? And that was when I started buying and selling. Um, and then it was around 2010 when we formalized the gallery because I had had one of those incredible moments where, I bought things my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And I had bought a painting for $25 at a roadside antique store in Wisconsin. And in around 2009, 2010, I sold it at Christie's for like 20 grand.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was one of those, you know. And so that was the seed money to really formalize the business.
Oh, that's amazing. Well,
Yeah.
if you talk about 1990s, cell collecting looked a lot different, production art, things like that. And even the internet looked a lot different. You probably
Yeah.
had dancing bananas on your homepage or whatever was popular
Yeah, you
then.
remember that, huh?
But it's interesting to think that it was difficult to discover things. So if you didn't have a direct way to get to that website, there wasn't really good search engines that would help you find certain things. I mean, there were some early search engines, but for the most part, I remember finding things because someone posted it in a chat room or there was a link to it on another website and people would index certain sites that they like. So how did people find you then? Do you know?
So it was funny. I was thinking about this last night, the differences between that time and now, and there are a couple of really big ones. One of the wonderful things was how physically present it all was in your world. So, like, you go to the mall, and Warner Brothers had their studio stores, and in the back was the art. And Disney had the same thing. And not only that, but within 20 miles of my house, there were three animation art galleries.
Wow.
So, like Jim Lentz, who runs Heritage now, had a gallery 5, 10 miles from my house that I could go. And, it was good and bad because you could go and see stuff on the walls and be like, oh my God, I want that.
Yeah.
And you got catalogs, you got mail order catalogs from all over the place. Now, things were harder to find and prices were more expensive. So that's the difference now is that, like you're saying with the internet, like all the things that it was hard for me to find back then, I can get now. And the prices are sort of down for various reasons as well.
Wow, it's amazing to think that physical stores were set up for animation art, but maybe it's just because I'm in the Midwest, you don't see that. Are you in California or someplace that's close to where a lot of this animation was being produced?
Yeah, so I am now, and originally, actually, I was in Chicago up
Hmm.
until a couple of years ago, and so yeah, it was one of the biggest galleries in the country was in Iowa, Lanesburg, um, and but now you're right, it's like over the years, I've gotten gallery contracts with Chuck Jones, Clampett, who's now owned by Choice, Peanuts.
Hmm.
They're all here. They're all like literally nearby, and one of the couple of the great moments I've had is like when I first got into Clampett and got to go there and literally pick amongst the piles of Batman cells. Oh, that was
Wow.
wonderful. Yeah.
That's a dream to be able to
Yeah.
find a stack or a box or something. Because you said you found one. What was the one that you mentioned that you found that you just sold for 20,000? You said you found that at like a flea market or something
Well, I
or
don't.
antique mall.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So that was
Uh,
actually that was a painting. It was an
Oh,
impressionist
gotcha.
painting. But that was another thing. There have been these distinct phases over time, and like 10, 15 years ago, the internet was a place where people sold a lot of stuff and they didn't know what they had. And at that time, I was buying. Uh, there was a guy. There was those storage guys and girls who
Like
buy a
Storage Wars, that TV show.
yes, yes. So a
Okay.
guy bought a storage unit and it had like 20,000 drawings in it.
Wow.
And that actually it sort of tracks because the studios many times this was just garbage to them. And so this had drawings. They were all of the same time period, like the 1970s.
Hmm.
And so you had Peanuts, you had Scooby Doo. It was weird. I'm not sure why it crossed studios, but yeah, I bought like thousands of those at the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Has this been a pretty lucrative thing for you consistently, or have you found there's been ebbs and flows where times have been better than others?
Yeah, it's definitely been ebbs and flows, certainly over like 90s to now. I mean, 90s is the classic, the galleries went crazy and a lot of them got into it for the money and it all crashed.
Hmm.
Um, Odd things have happened like during the pandemic, we did amazing, unlike, most people because everybody's trapped at home looking to, I don't know, put art on their wall. So that was good. Uh, but
You like it, the nostalgia factor. It kind of hits that demographic because they were on the last cusp of when they used this animation style, the way they would draw before they went to computers. That's
Yeah,
pretty
that's
amazing.
another pattern we see is that like I've tracked this like 30-year-olds, you go back to whatever cartoons they loved as a kid, when they hit the point where they have money, that particular franchise becomes very popular.
Hmm. There's got to be a phrase for that, a term, or you can coin it.
Yeah.
Um, but part of it too is that right now I saw people talking online about Simpson cells, and I like that. It seems like the opposite's going on. Like, and they said in the '90s, and one of the I think writers for The Simpsons said I used to be able to get that for $100 on the lot, whatever you wanted, and he's like now they sell for could be thousands or more, and he's like, wow, that's something else. So it seems like sometimes there's some cells may have peaked in the '90s and dropped off, but why do you think some of them gained value?
I'm not sure. I mean, this is why I always tell people, unlike some other folks, don't buy for investment. Buy because you love it. Because
Mhm.
then no matter what happens, you'll be happy with it. I'm happy with everything I bought in the 90s, even though so like Charlie Brown has kind of gotten a little more expensive while I don't know, something like Ricky Tikki Tavi has gone down. And it's a complicated thing. I think some of it is supply. The
Hmm.
supply really changes over the worlds, and it can change like that if, let's say, an animator decides to sell everything he's had. I mean, there was a point, again, maybe 15 years ago, it was kind of sad where a lot of animators' estates, their
Hmm.
survivors, were selling their files. I mean, these guys and gals had files and files of stuff that they took home, reference material. And so we would buy a lot of that. And then all of a sudden there was a lot more of it.
Yeah,
You know,
that's something else.
yeah.
So if I were to go onto your website right now, which I am, I'm looking at it on the other computer screen over here. So you have it categorized by studios and artists. You
Yeah.
have different platforms, Etsy, eBay, of course, your website, charlesscottgallery.com. How do you manage all that, honestly? Because if you have them crossing over,
Right.
do you only have, I mean, could you find the same piece on different platforms? And then when something sells, are you rushing to the computer to, like, invalidate it on one of the other sites or something? Or how do you seriously manage when you have thousands of pieces of art?
Right. So that's a good question. And it's sort of a two-part answer. Number one, I came from IT originally. I have an IT background. Yeah. And so I had a lot of connections in IT. So this stuff is sort of a little bit natural for me. And that's kind of why we grew. We got on the internet doing this very early on. We were, on eBay, which is a mixed bag, before anyone else, really. Now most of them are on there. But the second part is that we do it pretty well. So occasionally we mess up. But the other thing is that, so because we've been doing it for so long, there's a little less on Etsy and our website and Amazon than there is on eBay, because we've been eBay members since like 1991 or something crazy. So there's a little less on our others. But now, and for the past 5 years, everything we put up goes up on all of them, with the exclusion of, on Saturday evenings, we put up new auction items on eBay, and some of those sometimes don't go up on all the websites.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there was someone that I interviewed a couple back, the Pop Art Hunter, tried a new site where it was almost like a live video streaming QVC, where you say, here's the things I'm going to list tonight or whatever it is. And then you do a live video in a live auction where people can bid on it or buy it. And it's almost like you can real time answer questions from the people that are there. It was a really cool concept. I think, is YouTube going to do something similar, or Facebook? One of the major social media platforms just announced they were going to start doing that. It might have been YouTube. Have you ever done live auctions, things like that, where you're interacting with people in real time? And what kind of experiences have you had with that? Because I mean, if some of these big social media platforms pick up on it, that might be a big option for some people.
Yeah, I've thought about that. So weirdly, because I am a collector, and it's a terrible sickness in my life that I control nowadays, because I collected collections. I have so much stuff personally. And so I had a friend or an acquaintance who was a Disney pin collector. You know how that got really big?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they were the first ones I saw doing that on Facebook. And we're talking right away when Facebook started doing the live streaming. So that was a couple of years ago. And they were, there was an excitement to it, right? I mean, that's why auctions in person, I sort of miss in-person auctions. There's a lot of excitement there. And so I thought about doing that. The thing is it takes a lot of organization, prep work, etc. And so it's something, I've got an enormous to-do list for us, and that's a possibility, because like every year I like to do something significantly new. And so I think that probably is in our future, because it's cool.
Well, he mentioned that it's a huge advantage if you have a theme. So if you're selling only Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle cells or only Simpson stuff, so you're going to attract a crowd of people that are hyper focused on that one thing. They're more inclined to buy, as opposed to multiple different things where there's some they like, some they don't like, things like that. So he says that's what, if you're using the medium that way, that's a really powerful thing. Which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, that makes sense, because it's still a problem. Like, even as a collector and as a seller, it's like, with 6,000 items, I'm constantly surprised by people contacting me and saying, do you have X? And I'm like, yeah, we have 3 of them. And they're like, they'll contact me via Etsy, and there's 3 of them on Etsy, and
Hmm.
whatever that is, they haven't found them if the search engine's not good enough or something. So I can see that being valuable.
Yeah, late. What don't you like about eBay?
Oh. I have
The
to be
fees are pretty
careful
high,
here.
aren't they?
What's that?
The fees are pretty high.
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, at this point, you can. It used to be that Amazon was the highest, but now you could wind up paying over 20% on fees. So yeah, it's crazy. They have an upcharge for international sales, this, that, and but really, the thing that has bugged me the most is that they're not a stable platform. I mean, I
Hmm.
can log on or have my people log on and they'll come to me and say, "Hey, guess what? Today you can't see the selling screen."
Huh.
And this is a regular thing. We're so involved in it that we probably see this more than most people, and we use all the features so much. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's an incredibly buggy platform.
Wow. So before we did the interview, you said you made a special trip to pick out some art pieces for the video. Okay,
Yeah,
so you have a lot to choose from. So
yeah,
I think part of it is trying to understand why you chose certain pieces and what they mean to you. Do you have them readily available?
I do. So let me preface this with a couple things. Number one, when I first started collecting, even though I love Disney and I was, I saw the premieres of all the Disney Renaissance movies, I was not when it came to collecting, I didn't specifically go after Disney. I was a child of the 70s. So
Mhm.
things like Scooby-Doo and Speed Buggy and stuff like that were the things I loved. And so I have a much more eclectic, I think, view. Number two, we have moved both the gallery and personally like 3 or 4 times in the past couple of years. So what I could grab was a little bit of what was close in the warehouse. So, the gallery is incredibly organized, but my personal collection not so much. But here, I'll start with this. This is a hand background from the 1980s Jetson series. And the great story is that one of I think the producers wound up taking all the backgrounds from this one home and putting them in a garage. And when she died, the person who was helping deal with the estate, I was able to buy like 40 of them from the show.
Whoa.
Yeah. This is where they go underground in some, I can't remember the episode name, but they go underground. And this is sort of the underground world.
Wow, look at that. That's beautiful.
And
Giant
then,
panoramics.
yeah, it's just gorgeous. So that's the other thing is I became really obsessed with um, the the production art, as Debbie called it in her thing. Production art is anything used to create the episode, and the
Yeah.
cell may be the final thing, but in some ways it's not the art; it's a copy.
Hmm.
It really is. And so
Hmm.
I love backgrounds. I love drawings. Here, let's show you some more. This is from the Aladdin television show. A background,
Ooh, beautiful.
kind of nice. I have way too much to show you. Uh, an early model cell of or model sheet of Mickey. These were printed lithographs back in the
Wow,
day.
that is cool.
Yeah. Here's a little something from Milan. I did
Sure.
grab a couple Disney things. This is one of my faves. It's a key background from the original Scooby Doo.
Why is that so small compared to the other ones?
So key backgrounds generally are small. They're often it's the sort of the main one of the main artists create this, and then sometimes, like in the later era, these would be sent overseas, and they would create the larger ones from the keys. Back in this day, I don't know that they were doing it overseas, but
That
you had
doesn't
levels of artists.
that confuses me. It seems like it would be so much easier if you had the ability and the skill to do it. You just make the large one.
Yeah, I have to say, I think that it has to do with you got to remember one of the things that collectors don't often realize is that this was a huge business process. Here's another Scooby Doo one from a later show.
Oh, that's perfect, Scooby Doo. When
Yeah,
you
and
think Scooby Doo, that's what I think.
yeah,
In an abandoned warehouse.
right, right. So for example, people will often call me up and ask me, "Do you have X, Y, and Z from this. You have to remember that, like, when a studio got done with cells, they might throw them out. I mean, Warner Brothers, like, historically they would wipe them clean and reuse them. The
Oh, wow.
terrible story is they used them as a slip and slide.
Wait,
Yeah,
how?
they would lay them all out on the ground and then just scoot across them.
I
Yeah,
can't believe that.
yeah. I mean, Disney would throw them out too because originally they thought. I mean, they looked at the drawings again in the backgrounds as the true art. Do you
Wow.
recognize what this might be from?
Let me take a look there.
Yeah, this is a
Hmm.
hard one.
That is interesting. It
Yeah,
does look familiar, but I
it's
can't.
the Jurassic Park.
Is that right?
Yeah, the mosquito that goes and bites the dinosaur, and
During the instructional video?
Yep, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
So they're watching, like, here's how it's all done. It's very cartoony.
right.
Yes.
Yeah, the popular ones you'll see the cells of Mr. DNA or whatever.
Yeah, Mr. DNA.
This
That's
was
so
on the
cool.
group the other day. This was the Peter Pan by Fox with Tim Curry.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
yeah, some people were concerned about the fact that we may never see it because Disney now owns it and it conflicts with their.
Wait, so they never released it, or they just haven't put it out on like re-release?
So they released it and people kind of loved it. It was one of those that folks loved.
Yeah.
But now people despair of ever seeing it again because it's Disney actually sued Fox, and Fox won
Oh,
because really strange little things like the Peter Pan in this had his knife in his boot, not in his side.
it was enough.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh man, I would have thought they would argue public domain or something, but I guess not. Um, so before you showed some of the other ones, I want to go back to the
yeah,
mosquito.
yeah,
Are
yeah.
there sub collectors that only collect things like it was a small cameo of a cartoon. It's not like the whole produced thing, or here's a music video where it was only for one thing. Are there sub collectors of people that collect only like very specific one-off types of cartoons?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's so interesting to hear what gets people jazzed. I mean, there are people who collect just commercials.
Yeah.
Um, a really nice guy I know has the world's largest collection of three properties: The Grinch, The Simpsons, and Roger Rabbit.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's mostly his thing. I mean, his collections are in museums oftentimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are people who, one character, you
Hmm.
know, they
Interesting.
yeah. I mean, have you developed anything yet in what you love?
It's so
Or is it
strange because my collecting habits have changed a lot. First, I thought I want a little bit of everything I remember, so I'll just get a couple of everything, and then I realized, well, I kind of want to maybe just get the characters, and I'll focus on the characters I like the most as opposed to a little bit of everything. And then I'm like, well, maybe I want one of everything, but I want that one thing to be really cool.
yeah.
And then maybe I'll just look at one show and I'll try to collect as much as I can of that one show. And I haven't really quite settled in one direction yet. This is where I'm at. I made a deal with my wife that I'm going to sell stuff on eBay, and whatever profits I make on it, I'm allowed to spend on sales guilt free. So if I
Cool.
see something that's expensive, if I already built that up, I'm not going to feel guilty for getting it because I put all the work in to
Right.
sell on eBay. So I'm at the point where it's the most I've ever bought a cell for is I think $250. That's after shipping, and came over from the UK, so it was
Okay.
expensive shipping. So I'm at the point where I'm like, man, I might do a more expensive one if I see something I really like because I've already built up a credit.
Right.
And but the thing is, I've also gotten a lot more pickier. So when I have it, I'm like, this is a finite amount that I have to spend. I'm going to really make sure I want it. So I don't care if it's an expensive one. If I have it, I just want it if I want it. But that's the thing. It's a roller coaster ride. I don't know where I'm landing on all of this
Right,
stuff.
right. And that's okay. I mean, I very much have been the same way over the years. And a long time ago, I gave up, thinking, oh my God, it's got to be one thing. But I've been through those phases as well. I'm still in some of those phases, where I mean, there's still things like what is it? There was those PSAs in the 70s. I don't know if you would have heard of these, but there was this little guy I can't remember his name now. So I'm terrible. I know that I'm not like, those PhDs who can remember all the millions of facts. I
Yeah.
write everything down, everything. So talking to me, it's going to sound like I may not, I'm maybe kind of dense, but it's all written down. So Time for Timer, I think it is. There's this guy
Oh,
who used to sing this song about eating cheese, and
huh.
it used to come in between the cartoons, and I still need a cell from it, just
Yeah.
because I love that, and they're a little bit rare.
Like Schoolhouse Rock was, I mean, people love that. And that was on right around that same era, Saturday morning cartoons. Everyone remember those.
Yeah, that was one of my favorites, and so sadly, I was looking for this and I couldn't find it. Early on, one of the first things I did was try and get things signed
Oh,
back in the
okay.
early '90s, and I would do this thing where I would actually mail things to people, oftentimes not the art, but maybe a cover sheet or that kind of thing. And I had started a conversation or a friendship, a little bit of an acquaintance with Tom Yohe, the creator of Schoolhouse Rock,
Oh, cool.
and he sent me a whole packet of stuff of
Oh,
art. Yeah, he made me um, he drew me the bill sitting on Capitol Hill
oh, that's so cool.
and said to Charlie and all that. Yeah, so
That is so cool.
a little bit of that. But
I got to see some more of the stuff that you have there.
sure, sure. Here, I tell you what, I love The Simpsons as much as you do. I
Oh,
have
I love
watched
them.
it since the episode 1 of Tracy Ullman, and I have a lot of stuff. But I thought I'd show you one thing that was a little different from most stuff. This is, of course, I'm trying to get it so it doesn't
Oh, yeah.
glare. Mr. Burns'
Sure.
head when he finds Bobo in the future.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah,
That is cool.
yeah.
Even the
Well,
coloring of the background is beautiful.
I know.
That's just right at like the twilight or whatever they call that, getting close
Yeah.
to sunsetting. Look at him there.
Post-apocalyptic Twilight, right?
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. Um, Here, let's see. I'll show you some more of the cells. So these are some of the earliest things that I bought. This is Who Brothers.
And that's
Uh,
signed.
yeah, by Bill and Joe, Hanna-Barbera. And this is from those early direct-to-video releases, which
Oh,
became,
I see. That is cool.
yeah, really popular.
Super cool.
I used to love Darkwing Duck. I regret the fact that I sold. I had one with the whole cast,
Mhm.
but this is still pretty cool.
This is cool, of course. Darkwing Duck, very popular still.
Uh,
A lot of
yeah,
people collect.
yeah, isn't that
That's
crazy?
cool.
It's gotten. I think it's gotten more popular. Um, Here's one of my. This is. I've done a lot of writing in my life, and this is Bugs Bunny yelling at Shakespeare. I think this is from A Witch's Tangled Hair.
Uh-huh. What
And
does
he's
that
saying,
say?
"Oh yes, you will, because you're William Shakespeare." It's so very Bugs, right?
Like that.
Yeah.
The
And so
Warner
here's
Brothers
one of
was
the.
really good with those references. Like Animaniacs always pulled the classic characters in, and they're super collectible. I
Yeah.
think I watched a video once about Warner Brothers and what a massive advantage it was for them because of their music catalog and all the different music rights they owned were able to incorporate those in their cartoons, and it made a huge difference.
Yeah. The Animaniacs was interesting because they used a full orchestra to do the soundtrack, and I remember some story about because it was Steven Spielberg, he just got whatever he wanted.
Yeah, of
Right.
course, sure.
But I mean, you're right. I think that's one of the beautiful things about it. Like the old Looney Tunes cartoons had those wonderful soundtracks.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that's signed by Charles Schultz. That's one of the ones that I got.
Oh, that's super cool. What's the sticker on there? That's something that did
That's
they release that with the intention?
yeah.
Was that is cool.
So one of the things they talk about on the Facebook sites are seals and things, and sometimes paranoid. I think collectors get a little paranoid, a little too paranoid. Over the years, these studios, they're businesses, and so they've changed seals. The current seal that the Peanuts use is more of an embossed
Hmm.
silver seal, but this was the earlier one. Plus, a lot of uh, sort of how these things are released has changed over the years. When The Simpsons first released their art, it was through Circle Gallery, which used to be in all the malls.
Huh.
Um,
Okay. Oh, I
and
didn't know that.
so, yeah, so if you see art with the Circle Gallery sticker on it, it is authentic. It's from very early releases. I went to a release party with the voice of Homer Simpson when they first released it. That was when I met him, which was kind of cool.
That is cool. Castanella, is that his name?
Yes, yes. And recently, since coming to Hollywood, my favorite thing is that I got to go to a table reading of The Simpsons.
Wow, what
Oh,
a cool
yeah.
opportunity. What season was it?
So
Is-
I knew you were going to ask this, and I can't remember. This was pre-pandemic, and
so-
obviously they would have been doing it probably a year in advance. So this was probably 2018 or 19.
Gotcha. So within the last 5 years.
Yeah, yeah, and they gave us all scripts to read along, and I have the script, but
Cool.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
cool.
it's just astonishing watching. So, truth be told, three of the people now do the voices from home. They never leave their house, so they were
Wow.
on speakerphone. But to watch somebody go from one voice to another, it's just crazy.
It is amazing.
Yeah.
So when you saw all of that layout and they did their thing, were they flawless or did they mess
Yes.
up?
Oh, that was the other thing. It was just like, not only did they not miss a word, but like they had the jokes. Like they did it like that. They obviously they know the characters so well. It was just like I was roaring
They're
with
too professional. Too
yeah,
professional.
yeah. It was very exciting. Here, I have an interesting one for you. So one thing I'm very shameful about is like I'll buy things personally and then like shove them away very quickly because I've got to pay attention to the gallery and things like that.
Yep.
So this is an interesting one. I have the Emmy certificate, an Emmy certificate, mounted with a cell from I believe this is Tiny Toons, right?
Looks like it.
Yeah, Tiny Toons Adventures. And you can see it's I don't know, is that reversed on your screen?
No, it looks good. So is that like the hey, you've been nominated for an award, like
No,
certificate?
I believe it's you've won it. And I'm not sure how it works, but obviously this guy was the animation checker. So I wonder if like when a show wins an Emmy, maybe everybody involved. Um,
So like here, for the radio station I work for, we are the flagship station for the Cardinals. So if you are part of the pregame or postgame, or you run the engineer, or even like the St. Louis Blues or anything like that, if you're the organ player, you'll get a Stanley Cup ring, but it's just not going to be the same one the players get. So they'll make one for the staff that work around it. I'm guessing if it's a similar concept where you get a certificate because you were on the staff, but of course you're not getting the trophy.
you may not get there. Right. And I just want to point out too that I bought this directly from him. So
That is so cool. That
yeah,
looks beautiful.
yeah,
And that's I'm trying to remember what that character's name is. But either way, that's a really cool setup to have. That's so
yeah,
unique.
yeah. It's very cool. I don't know. You want to see more? You want to talk more? It's up to you.
Oh boy, I can go either way. This is so fun seeing all of this stuff. How much did you pull, by the way? How many pieces did you bring?
Not so I've probably got I don't have actually that much more. Here, I've only got about two or three more.
Yeah, let's see them. I'm having fun.
So I always loved the Rankin Bass Hobbit, and then they
Mhm.
did one of the Lord of the Rings, and they were very intricate in their artwork. That's one of the reasons I love them.
I've seen a lot of Lord of the Ring up for sale lately. That's been really popular.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's
Yeah, one of those.
because they have the TV show coming out on Amazon.
Oh, that could be it.
Yeah, yeah. And you'll recognize this, I'm sure, background.
Is that Ninja Turtles? It looks like.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, anytime you're underground and it has that look like teenagers,
Right.
then that's super
That-
cool.
Yeah, that's their, where they hang out. Speaking of Ninja Turtles, I can see that one behind you, and I don't know if anyone's ever told you like where those came from, the green matted ones.
Yeah, because I have the bag it came in where it has the little sticker on it, like, hey, this is a limited art or whatever it's called. And it has is it MWS sticker
Yeah.
on it?
Yeah,
So-
that's the video.
So it's not the printed background's not scene matching. They were in the Technodrome at the time when they were about to fight. I found that on it's the end of season 2 where the
Oh, cool.
Splinter and Shredder were about to go at it,
Yeah.
and that's the only one I have. But again, like I got to the point where I just want to get one of every show I watched, and that was the Ninja Turtles one I got.
So I mean, those are cool. And it's really fun, isn't it? Looking up to find your piece in the show. I mean, that's part of the joy of it. But those were one of my favorite parts of my past too, because apparently that was a deal where they tried to mass market them. So they sold them at Toys R Us, uh, and they misjudged. Like either they released too many or people were not that interested. So I found out about it, and I can remember going from Toys R Us to Toys R Us because they were on clearance
Oh,
for like $4 a piece.
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and so I bought like 40 of them back then because I was really into.
I wish that I could just go somewhere and like see cells. Recently, we just had it wasn't Comic-Con. It's like one of those fan expos that came through town, and there was a cell booth. Someone set up selling them in there.
Do you know who it was?
No, I don't know because I didn't actually go to it. One of my friends were there, and they just like,
Ah,
guess what I found, and they
right.
were taking pictures of it and selling that. But it was just things they bought off of Animation Legends. I knew it immediately because it was just the certain ones I've always seen on there, just
Yeah,
with a huge uptick on it.
yeah. So that's an interesting story too. I'm filled with too much history and research, I think. So tell me if this is boring, but a couple of years back, something strange happened. All of a sudden, thousands of pieces of animation art were showing up in pawn shops around Los Angeles.
Huh.
Um, and it's a longer story. Like, a company that used to be owned by Steve Shane has had millions of cells, millions. He had most of the Filmation cells,
Oh,
things
wow.
like that. He
Okay.
had Ghostbusters. He had all that. And all of a sudden, artwork from he sold it to someone else, and all of a sudden, they were being sold at pawn shops. And I have some conflicting stories about what happened there, but that's why, for example, Ghostbusters is everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because they were all dumped into the pawn shops, and then people bought them for pennies on the dollar.
Oh, wow. That is interesting. I've always wanted to find a cell in the wild. Like I tell
Yeah,
my wife who loves to go like Goodwill shopping, thrift stores and things. I say, honey, if you find anything, you have to immediately call me.
right, right.
I haven't found anything in the wild. I just don't think I'm in the right spot for it. It seems like maybe if you're by where the production studios were, if you're like a West Coast type of deal, there's a chance of it, but never have I found one in the wild.
It'll happen. I mean, it's certainly it's possible out there, right? I mean, like I said, there were galleries out there all the time. So keep chasing that dream, right?
Keep chasing it. I know. I saw that you do have some framed. You have some in binders. What do you prefer? Do you prefer one or the other?
Well, certainly, from a stability standpoint, framing is best. But I also tell people to, be realistic about what you can do, right? And the level of your art. If it's a $20 sell and there's millions out there, it's probably okay that you
Yeah.
can keep it in a binder and things like that. And for us at the gallery, I mean, if we're selling things and they're in that sort of level, we will keep them in the acid-free binders, etc. We will keep them vertical. I don't suggest ever laying them flat. Obviously, if you can frame it, that's the most stable environment as long as you use the right materials, you don't put it in direct sunlight, that kind of thing. So for me, I will attempt to frame them when I have the time and the attention
Yeah.
for the important pieces. Um,
We have
and
some pieces. People debate getting them signed or not. So if they're not a well-known name, so you got Charlie Brown signed by Charles Schultz or whatever. That's awesome.
right,
Some people like it, some people don't. Trying to find the artist of whoever it is, get it signed.
yeah,
Let's say aftermarket. Let's say someone has something signed. Does it add or subtract value, do you think, to this average cell collector
So
if they're looking to purchase?
yeah, classically it's added value. Um, that early long ago, galleries would have signings where Friz Freleng, Chuck Jones would be there to sign your cells, and so it was an added value. But
Can you hold on 1 second? I'm sorry. I just said I got to alert. Zoom said you've been signed out. Hold on. We're still going. We're still recording. I
okay,
think we're okay.
all right,
It says we're recording. I think we're okay.
okay,
Sorry.
okay.
Did anything flash on your side?
No,
Oh, that's weird. I'm using a work account and it said it was logged in somewhere else. So I wonder if someone logged into my computer at work and maybe it knocked me over there. But I think we're okay. We're still
okay,
good.
all right.
Sorry about that thing, but keep
That's
going. I'm
okay.
sorry.
That's okay. But collectors have always had their own, preferences, and that's fine. So there have always been collectors who don't like the signature and do like it. I did see for the first time ever, somebody on one of the Facebook groups was like, "Hey, what do you use to get rid of a signature?" And I was like, "Oh." But you know, if that's what they like, I don't think it was one of the people who are deceased, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So it
Okay.
was, you know.
Have
Um,
you ever because you do have high-end pieces. Have you ever had a piece become damaged and lose value? Does that happen? Or I just got to imagine with the amount of inventory you have, there had to have been stories where something's happened to the pieces you've had.
well, so it's surprisingly rare in our world. Surprising to me. Now, granted, we are very careful with things. Unfortunately, I'm not wearing my gloves today, but I also only touched one piece of art.
Yeah.
Um, and like I said, we're very careful about even touching them. The idea is to keep them stable. Um, that being said, this is one of the reasons that I personally moved into collecting um, drawings and backgrounds, because I realized that cells, they were only meant to exist for a very short period. They were meant to be used and discarded.
Mm.
And so they were never made with materials that were meant to last. And so they do deteriorate in odd ways. Like one thing we've seen is the blue paint in Marge's hair
Hmm.
occasionally turns like striated on
Oh, interesting.
early, yeah, or some of the early Fat Albert stuff. The same thing will happen with the reds. Um, and and so yes, I've had like those early Fleischer things or things like that where um, they're already cracked, and if it's got a crack, you touch it too much, and
Oh, yeah.
there may be trouble. But the thing is we also try and stay away from a lot of that. For example, one of your other folks mentioned the horror of Disney laminating for a little while,
Yeah, that's right.
and we just don't buy and sell those.
Mm.
So we stay away a lot from damaged stuff. I'd rather just not get into that.
There
So
might be a parody in there somewhere with Jurassic Park bringing that back up where they pulled and extracted the DNA from that mosquito that was just encased. So maybe the encasement of the Disney
yeah,
laminated cell one day will have to be open to save animation cells. It's like
yeah,
it'll solve
yeah,
the key.
yeah.
Are you pretty good at detecting counterfeits? And have you ever been fooled before?
So I'll start by saying, that's one of the things that I found interesting about the Facebook groups is that so we've touched hundreds of thousands of cells, and over that time, you do detect an eye, but you also have done a massive amount of research. That's been one of the hallmarks of what we do. We have digital catalogs of all the production numbers of all the studios, or letters if it's filmation. We've seen everything that's out there, and so um, there's more variance than people think to
Huh.
begin with. For example, some collectors will freak out because there's nothing on the production strip. Well, that happens. You know, these are humans, and remember, animation art moves through the process in a folder. So if it's stuck in there and they missed one,
Yeah.
not a big deal. However, we can now look at something, and how we do it is say there are 4 things about it that are questionable, you know, um, and I just won't touch it.
Mhm.
So in general, we often don't have to deal with it because I just won't buy anything for the gallery that I can't 100% say, I believe this is real. I mean, I'm a collector, and so I wouldn't want that horror for anyone.
Sure.
Now, that being said, there's a lot of obvious things, like, you know, the research we've done about the whole configurations for Disney and when they switched over, you know, the years and even the specific um, um, productions, and the progression of what they did, where they took the 3-hole punches and punched more into it. We know all that stuff, so those are easy tells. Um, you know, most of the time, the forgers are just doing a bad job, like that weird person on Etsy that I don't understand why they haven't been taken down, that I think Debbie mentioned, who just makes photocopies.
Oh yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, that's easy. So in terms of really complex forgeries, they're out there, but they're rarer, because if you were that accomplished, why would you make a $30, or let's say even a $200 cell, when you could forge a Warhol for real? I mean, I
Yeah.
know there's those ridiculous Warhols that those people sell. So I don't know that I answered your question. We see them, we can see them, but I try to avoid it oftentimes by not buying anything that has any questionable part of it. It has to tick all the right boxes. And so I say no to a lot of stuff.
Yeah. How do you
Yeah.
come across stuff? Do people come to you looking to sell? Are they actively reaching out to you?
Yeah, it's less so than it used to be. It's more sort of individuals now. Like I said, back 15 years ago, it would be people selling like huge lots. You know, somebody, there was the one famous artist, I think his name is Eisenberg. He's in the Smithsonian, and he worked on uh, Heidi's song. And like his widow sold us a bunch of his artwork. She contacted us. We don't buy as much anymore as well because we have so much, and I've dedicated us to getting that up for sale. We just have this enormous back inventory. That being said, we still do buy. You know, we used to do all the auction houses. We used to, you know, we have contracts with all the studios, so we still buy
Mhm.
from them. Um, so,
Do studios slowly release? I mean, I would think that if you're a studio, the incentive would be to release as much as you can while you still can. But it sounds like they kind of like set up a dam and they're just slowly letting the water trickle over, and then you just kind of you're at the mercy of what they feel like releasing. Because if I was
yeah,
a studio, I would think I'm storing this stuff. I'm spending time and resources to maintain it to make sure it doesn't turn to garbage. I'd be like, you know what? It's better for me to get rid of it now. But it sounds like they really try to control the market of what their materials are out there.
yeah, it's amazing in the time that you've been collecting. I don't know how long it is. You've got some very good instincts about what's happening.
Hmm.
Um, it's my belief that the studios just don't care. I mean, if you're Warner Brothers, which is a, you know, billion-trillion-dollar company, what do you care that you've got something that can make you, I don't know, 200 grand in a year? I don't know what their total sales are.
Hmm.
And so that's the feeling I get, is that the studios themselves, you know, Disney, obviously to them, the artwork is an important, it's part of their archive, that kind of thing. But the cells themselves and selling them, it just feels like they're not, you know, that's not a priority for them. And so yes, people like, but you're also right that it is often a case of because of the sheer volume. I think collectors sometimes don't understand the volume involved. That yes, they pull some and offer it. They
Mhm.
can't handle you calling and saying, "I want this character in this scene." Now, Choice bought Clampett, so the Batman cells and those kind of cells. There's a bit more. We have access to that. A couple of galleries do. There's a bit more ability to say, "Hey, I want this thing." But then again, they've also been selling them for 40 years, so you're not going to find a good Harley from your favorite episode.
Yeah.
They're just gone.
This reminds me too. I mean, there's governments like that too. So if you think of NASA and the amount of tapes and things they've recorded that just go into archive, never to be heard again, and they don't even know where some of the significant
Yeah,
pieces are. And
yeah.
same thing with it's people. You look back at the Watergate tapes when they were recording Nixon. We still haven't fully archived everything that's been secretly recorded in the White House.
Right.
There are people that's their hobby almost to finally go through all the tapes and document if there's anything significant in them because the government hasn't. And that's like, you're going back 50 years.
Right. Right. It's astonishing. I mean, the thing is that once you get into these numbers of things, it becomes crazy. And again, I keep mentioning these folders, but I think it's because I'm traumatized. Like we've bought raw animation art in the boxes, and what happens is you get this folder with sometimes 100 things in it, and the first 30 are a hand going like this,
Yeah.
and the next 30 is the arm going like this, and the rest of it is the body, and you have to put it back together.
Yeah.
And then the drawings are at the bottom, and there's somebody on the Facebook groups who used to do this for Disney. I can't remember his name. It's terrible that I forget his name because he's
That's fine. Yeah.
guy in it. Anyway, he used to do that for Disney, and it's backbreaking labor, and it's part of the process of readying something for sale. And so when you're talking about 100,000 cells, I mean, it's the same thing that you're talking about with Watergate. It's like it may not get done because it's so huge.
What did they say? Any half-hour cartoon program is like 40 to 50,000 cells or something like that. I don't remember the number, but
Yeah, it depends on the quality of it. I mean, some of them, the higher qualities can have, 100,000. But, again, it's like depending upon cost, Filmation in Hanna-Barbera was famous for, if you see the word stock at the bottom of a cell, particularly with them, if you had Scooby-Doo and the gang walking, you didn't reanimate that every time. You
yeah,
had the cells, and they were the stock ones, and you just had them walking, and you'd change the mouth.
right.
And so you'll have 100 mouth cells, but one
Yeah.
set of them walking.
I wish I had the book. I thought I moved it down here, but have you seen the book about the X-Men? They released
Yeah.
a book and they were talking about it, and they said you can basically get away with like 7 different sounds that can make, like if you're animating
Like
the mouth.
mouth.
Yeah, and that's all it
Yeah.
is. There's like 7 different configurations that you can make pretty much anything in the English language with. And it goes to show you that you could reuse a lot of that over and over and over again.
Yeah. I mean, that's hysterical but that's the thing. They figured that out over years and years. All the shortcuts. One of the things that I was shocked at first was that, let's say you had to redraw a head, excuse me, on a drawing, that over the course of 100,000 drawings, it's cheaper to cut out the part that you don't have to redraw and tape it into the drawing. And so we will very frequently come across these drawings with this precisely taped in part.
Yeah.
And maybe they'll photocopy one part of it and the rest will be a drawing. And it's all about saving money.
Oh, yeah. I think I've seen that too. And of course, the tape's all yellowed and brittle.
Yeah.
However, sometimes they'll tape things in or whatever.
Right.
That's pretty amazing to me. The way that animation art is today, are you surprised? Are you surprised there's new collectors? Because there hasn't been any cartoons animated this way in a long time. For me, I'm kind of surprised I'm into this. I never knew it existed, but I'm so happy. I love the hobby, but it's a little surprising to me that there are new collectors that have probably, grew up in an era where there was all digital.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me just because, I mean, what were the ones that got you into it? What was the cartoon where you saw the cell and you were like, hmm,
You know,
you
it might have
were
been He-Man cells I saw, and I thought that is the coolest thing. And He-Man's super popular. They're always selling
yeah.
that stuff on
And were
eBay.
you watching that as a kid? Was that your era?
I watched some of it as a kid. The things I watched the most as a kid, DuckTales,
Mm.
Inspector Gadget. So we're talking late 80s. I watched a lot of the Ghostbuster cartoons.
Yeah,
I remember watching that when it was new on television.
yeah,
And then, of course, you hit the 90s and Nickelodeon starts making shows and you see more Disney on TV and things. It wasn't just the cable network that some people had,
yeah,
the people that had cable growing up, those guys.
yeah.
Uh,
Seriously.
I'm
I
all over
know.
the years
I
now.
didn't have them early on either. I didn't have that or the pool table or the in-ground pool. Those were the three things that the richer kids had that I
Oh yeah,
looked.
no, like for me, where I grew up, you were rich if you had an ice machine inside of your fridge.
Oh
Like
yeah,
that's like, oh, that was the class separator. If you walked into
right,
someone's house and you can get ice straight out of the fridge, you
right.
knew. You
Like
knew
go
they were
up
better off.
to yeah, yeah. I'm not surprised yet, but I worry because like what you're talking about, the ones that you fell in love with still had cells.
Mhm.
So what I'm worried about is 10, 20 years from now when the people who are hitting that uh, point where they have money to spend, the cartoons that they fell in love with as a kid didn't have cells. We're going to hit that point, and so will just the love of the cartoons. There was an era where it was just drawings, and we've hit some of that, Samurai Jack and
Oh yeah.
things like that. But as we move out of that, I'm curious to see what happens. We'll see.
And then some of them, like the Pixars that were all digital, they have drawings. I mean, there were artists that were physically drawing things, and people
Yeah.
collect that.
I mean, that
Um,
maybe we'll move. Maybe that's it. Maybe we'll move into the kind of art that I love. Sometimes I call it pre-production art, but it's production art. There were. I have talked to a lot of animators over the years, but I haven't talked about this thing. I haven't asked them, look, later on, is there a point where there was no drawings? I know that like on the Samurai Jack reboot, like I believe all of it was done online. Not even the backgrounds anymore were done,
hmm.
uh, and not even the drawings. I think it was all computerized. But I don't know. Maybe there still was storyboards, or I don't know.
There has to be things in syndication that drew people. And I'm worried too that sometimes these really popular series, and I think about Simpsons again, it'll price themselves out. There's no way I can, when I'm thinking about when I first got into it, no way I would spend $1,000 on a cell. I'd be like, of course. Well, I guess I'm just not getting into this hobby then. That's way too expensive.
Right. I shouldn't tell you this because I'm a gallery owner, but they do go up and down. So it's my
Yeah.
belief that if you hang on to that love long enough, you'll be able to get those pieces because that's what's happened in the past 10 years. I've seen things that you know collectors. Yeah, I don't know what you call it. Collectors with a lower price point could never have gotten in the 90s. You can get now.
Hmm. Yeah.
So things like Star Trek the animated series.
Yeah.
Those were, you know, $700 when I was looking at them in the 90s, and now they're much more affordable. They're
Oh, that is
$100.
interesting. I
Yeah,
look too about all of the things that I search for. I'll search eBay. I'll just look, okay, I wonder what's new, where you can search and sort it by what was newly listed. And you
yeah,
do see a lot of the same series and a lot of the same type of things. And then once in a while, you'll catch something new on there, which is pretty exciting.
yeah,
Um, the hobby by itself, I've really enjoyed. Going back to something we mentioned at the start of it, I don't have people that will, if I tell them about my hobby is, their eyes will glaze over and they'll humor me for
yeah.
at most 2 minutes. And then after that, they're like, okay, let's talk about something else. And my wife's like that too. I said, hey, can I tell you about something I saw? And she's like, no, she don't even humor me anymore. We're
Right,
at that point.
right. Yeah, I mean, I don't. I think that's fairly common, right? I
Yeah.
mean, uh, and yeah, I don't show my wife that many things. I show her the things that I think she'll get excited about, you know. But yes, I that's why I'm so excited about this. Is like to talk to someone about animation art is fun. It's to talk about your hobby and what you're interested in, and so like I've picked up a lot of friends who are like dealers over the years because of that, like Frank Saboda, I think that's his name, who sells Nick, who sells specifically SpongeBob cells. He bought
Oh,
like
okay.
30,000 of them years ago. And he's at most of the cons. You know, it was great because when I met him, all of a sudden we had all this in common and we got to talk about stuff. So I do wish that there were better ways for us to connect. And maybe that's the end game. Maybe that's what people should do on Facebook is, you know, take these groups that we have and maybe have gatherings online where
Hmm,
we chat with each other or something. That
that's a
would
good
be
idea.
yeah.
Do you ever, is there anything that you've always wanted to find, but you have never seen a release of? Any cartoon series that is, if you were to see it, you'd instantly buy it because you've never seen it anywhere?
Well, there is that, like I mentioned, there's that one commercial one where I've seen one or two over the years, but they've been hard to get my hands on. And that's often what it is that it often goes out of the price point I'm willing to pay for
Mhm.
it because I'm trying to think if there's anything. I will say, like, over the past 15 years, I've fulfilled a lot of my wishes,
Oh, that's good.
which is great. You know, there are backgrounds I'd still like to get out of certain things. Like Ricky Tikki Tavi was one of my favorites, and I that was one of the first cells I bought, and I had it signed by Chuck.
Mm.
Um, but I still don't own any backgrounds from that.
Have you ever seen Disney in the 90s had that cartoon Recess? Have you seen any of those?
So I know people love that, and I haven't seen any. So that's a good
Yeah.
example of like this mystery of like, where are they? Um,
So, like, for the sake of my kid, he's 7, so he's in first grade, and he was like, "Ah, I want to see cartoons of kids at school." You know, that's new to him. It's like,
yeah,
so we're
yeah,
like, "Oh, Recess, this is perfect. You'll love it. It's them in the playground." So we started watching it together, and he said, "Do you have any animation cells of Recess?" And I said, "No. Let me go look and see if I can find one."
yeah.
Can't find them anywhere. Haven't been able
Yeah,
to find them at all.
I don't know why that's one of them. That's, you know, are they just all hidden away in a vault, or did they throw them away?
Yeah.
Or I'm not sure. It bugs me. I like, again, I love the history of this, so I want to know what's happening with them. Where are they?
Yeah, and the animation style was so cool in that series. It was done in an old school type of way, what you'd expect to see from, 70s or
Yeah.
so that was like, oh, I really dug that. So it looked really beautiful the way they laid it out. Um,
Have you gone, you know, there are some interesting references out there. You know, Heritage is not for everyone for various reasons, but you know, they do have their database available of everything that's sold.
that's a good point.
Yeah, and
I'll have to go
so
back.
that's one of the things, you know, besides going back to our archives, which I don't remember everything, so we may have had one in the past and I don't remember. But you can go onto their website as a reference tool because they have millions of uh, data points from the past on there to see, you know, were there three in the past 10 years?
What do you talking about auction sites like Heritage? Do you feel like people can still get deals, or do you find that pretty much collectors have cracked the code, figured it out, and you're pretty much going to pay the same on a site like that anyway?
So it varies. And I would say the first thing is caution, caution, caution. You know, they are about making money. There's a wonderful documentary out called The Lost Leonardo,
Hmm.
which teaches you a lot about auction houses and art galleries, and about the fact that they're all in it together to get money. So they'll do some rudimentary checking, but things will slip through. So you need to educate yourself before you go to an auction like Heritage. And the fact is they've got so much moving through. It is difficult for them, I think, sometimes to vet everything. That being said, their signature auctions, which I think are twice a year or four times a year for animation art, the prices are higher there than any place. Any place. So it's very difficult to get a good price there, but it can happen. Their weekly ones better, but actually, if you go out into some of the more obscure but established ones, like Van Eaton Galleries, or here I'm selling other places, but you know, again, I'm a collector, so as well. Howard Lowry, they're a venerable one that really seems to come up with some good stuff. I think in those places you may get more bargains. And, you know, occasionally on eBay still or Etsy or them, you may find something. Etsy was the place, weirdly, 10 years ago, I found the only Daria animation art um, in the wild that I've ever seen. There was
Wow.
a girl in her late 20s who had been an intern on the show, and she had pulled storyboard packets out of the garbage and sold us one.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah. But back to your original question, I think you can find them. It's a little more work, and you got to be educated. And I would say too, feel free to come to us at the gallery, Charles Scott Gallery.
That's right.
We're happy because we love it, and because we love collectors. We field questions from folks about art that's not ours. About we won't do digital appraisals. Um, but we will do something where someone says, "Hey, what do you think about this?"
Hmm.
And
Okay.
I'll say, "Look, we won't say yes or no, but I can say, look, it's got these points." Here, I'll give an example for a complicated thing that happened to us early on when we first started buying Snow White cells.
Mhm.
Um, we had to learn that there are Snow White cells from Snow White, and there are Snow White cells from the Disney television show, Wonderful World of Color, that they
Okay.
used the original drawings and repainted new cells.
Interesting.
And Snow White had a color palette that was enormous. They didn't use that enormous color palette when they repainted them. So there are cells of the dwarves that don't have the same amount of shading and things like that. So if
Interesting.
you're buying at auction, you need to know that's why that dwarf cell may be much less expensive than the original one, and you're going to think it's a bargain. But again, we're here to help if people have questions about things like that. So
Yeah, there's a few that I've always had like search alerts for. MTV, you see Beavis and Butthead all the time.
yeah,
And then sometimes you'll see is it the Aeon Flux or Eon
yeah,
Flux or
yeah, I
but I've
love.
never there was one in the 90s I loved called The Head. You remember Coneheads? They did a thing where, Dan Aykroyd had the Conehead or whatever, but
Yeah,
the idea of this one was the guy had like an alien living in his Conehead, and he had a bunch of friends that also had like these weird like deformities. Like one dude had a lawnmower blade fall off and impale his head, and he just like walked around with it. And I've tried to find that art too. I've never found that, and it's just like eventually, it's got to be out there somewhere, or maybe I
yeah,
guess they destroyed it all. Who knows?
yeah. Again, it's another one of those mystery ones. I will say again, I'll give a shout out to another gallery. Cricket has been the distributor for a lot of the MTV stuff.
Mm.
Certain properties for years, certainly Aeon Flux and what was the other one you said?
Beavis and Butthead's
Beavis and
popular.
Butthead, yes, whose prices have skyrocketed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so you could try them. Again, I don't know if a studio would be willing to release something they haven't released, but they may have a contact.
Who knows? It's
Yeah.
just fun talking about and getting the backstory in some ways. I like learning about this. Is there anything
I
we
mean,
didn't
there are a
cover?
lot of those cartoons out there that, like, there's this one with Dana Carvey. Dana Carvey had a brief cartoon where I think the story was one of those where, like, the studio pulled it before it was released, so they only showed one or two episodes here and there.
Huh.
And we have a pile of animation art from it that we haven't processed, but that exists. You
Yeah, I
know?
saw one come up. It wasn't Dana Carvey, but it was David Spade, and he had a cartoon that
Yeah,
someone posted up, and it's like I didn't even know this existed.
maybe I'm
And
talking about David Spade. I have
yeah,
trouble with names, so it may be his.
and
Um,
Dana Carvey, I haven't seen much of the critic that was out there. They did the
yeah,
John Lovitz one, but there was that one Simpsons crossover, and I think people have that, but I haven't
I have a
found any.
drawing up from that right now.
Do you?
Yeah,
That's
I
really
have
cool.
John Lovitz in The Simpsons being the critic.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
was a cool series.
yeah, yeah,
And then sometimes they'll change networks, and that could change things too.
yeah,
Like Doug, for example, went from Nickelodeon to Disney, and that changed things too.
yeah. I
Um,
didn't. I was not as into Doug, but from what I hear, the Disney one was not as great. It
yeah.
lost some fans when it moved, but I don't know. I
Oh
don't know.
yeah, Billy West, the voice guy, and he did a million things.
Yeah.
I read somewhere that he didn't go over because he didn't want to work with Disney. He's like, it's fun doing Nickelodeon, but he's doing like Ren and Stimpy and all this stuff, and he's like, I just don't want to be part of Disney. So they
Yeah,
had to get a new voice actor for that, the main
yeah.
character, Doug.
That's always rough. I mean, sometimes it works. Sometimes it's as a kid, it was like when the Peanuts would change voices, I was like, oh, that this is not the voice. But sometimes it's been more successful. You
Oh,
know.
I get it. Is there anything we didn't cover here that we should talk about?
You know what? Let me see. Let me see if I had any. Um,
Oh, this has been fun. You got so much
yeah.
knowledge of this stuff.
Well, I mean, that's one of the things that I have loved about it is learning about it. Here I'll tell you, I have certain mysteries. I have certain things that I don't have the answer to yet, but I have tidbits of. Like, at one point, one of the business people involved in Friz Freeling's company, DePatie Freeling, who made an astonishing amount of cartoons. If you ever look them up, it's surprising. They did everything from the late Looney Tunes. Pink Panther was their big one, but I believe they did some of the first early Marvel stuff. I mean, it's crazy what they did. And I bought a pile of their business papers at one point, and in it was a folder labeled Beauty and the Beast, and it's got a budget layout and then a little bit of artwork of what she might look like. And so, animators went from studio to studio, and to this day I wonder, was that one of the earliest, did that influence the Disney Beauty and the Beast? I mean, I haven't researched it, but we have a lot of things like that we found over the years.
Do you think artists would audition, as in, hey, if kind of like an actor would audition for a role, would they audition to be an animator for a Disney movie?
Yeah, it was very formalized, I think, for a while at Disney, where they actually had a regular process. We may even have, this is, again, one of the things we keep as research. I have both Hanna-Barbera and Disney and maybe Warner Brothers books about how to animate. That were internal things. And as part of that, I think we may have one of the documents from Disney of how to audition. Actually, and we have folders from animators with their audition pieces.
Interesting.
Yeah, I have, I can't remember his name, but we have somebody who did his audition pieces for Ren and Stimpy.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and so we have that. So those are some of the things that I find most interesting.
That artwork's out there. I do have one Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah?
I have a Ren and Stimpy, and I have it up here on the wall. I can show you real quick.
Yeah. Let's see.
So, I don't know. Let's see if I can get it.
Oh, yeah. I love it when they're this is one of the things I love about The Simpsons is that every frozen frame that gives you so much life and information and
comedy. And that show, oh man, were they goofy. They had some of the craziest reactions, absurd, gross, disgusting, hilarious stuff. Right. For a kid's show is pretty amazing. Yeah,
I have a friend who, certain people who are obsessed with certain shows, and I have a friend who's obsessed with.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I got.
What else do you got? What was your $250 one?
It was a Simpsons one.
Okay.
It was one of Chief Wiggum. So it was from the 4th season, the first episode where they do the barbershop quartet.
Yes.
And it's a very.
Sharps.
What's that? The B Sharps. Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't a memorable scene, but so they kick Chief Wiggum out, and then he tries to protest the new band by showing up to Moe's. And he's got a bunch of people with signs, we love Wiggum and stuff. So he's there acting all smug, oh, this is good. Look at all these people supporting me. And as soon as Barney opens his mouth and they realize he's great, they abandon Chief Wiggum. So it's just he's super smug, oh, they're going to let me back in. It's kind of a cool little piece.
So many wonderful moments in The Simpsons. That's the problem. It's drawing wise, I've let myself keep. This is the problem with owning a gallery. It's I have to force myself to let the pieces go through the process and not grab them for myself.
Yeah.
But I've let myself, because we purchased literally thousands, an enormous collection of Simpsons stuff from one of the people involved in the show years ago, I've allowed myself to grab a bunch of the drawings. And so I have things like Homer eating his head when he's the donut.
Oh, donut, of course. That's
great. Or
wow.
Where suddenly he's I think it's Japanese, he's on the box of
Mr. Sparkle.
yes, Mr. Sparkle. You know,
It's
I've
awesome.
kept those. A lot of the drawings of my favorite crazy moments.
Oh, Mr. Sparkle.
Yeah,
Yeah, those are classic moments.
yeah,
Yeah, maybe I should wait for Simpsons prices to come down. They're super high right now. People are, and plus the backgrounds, the original backgrounds are going for a fortune right now. Those seem to be super hot.
yeah. I have a lot of background drawings that we haven't put up yet.
Hmm.
Some really spectacular ones, and I just have to agree. My folks are always like, "Come on, just let us let go of these,"
Yeah.
and I have a tough time doing it. So the drawings may be a way for you to get into it. The backgrounds are wonderful. We have one up for sale now, and this is another thing that I'll do that I'll admit to is sometimes you'll see a crazy price on something, and it's
Mhm.
because I don't want us to let it go.
Oh yeah, I bet.
Yeah, we have. I used to have them put that in there. Have you ever watched American Pickers?
Yes.
Yes. Used to love that show. So they used to say, "What's your like?" I forgot what the phrase was. It was like, "What's your okay crazy price? I'll sell it for."
Hmm.
So sometimes I tell my people, "Put a crazy price on that," and then I'm comfortable letting it go. So we've got a crazy priced background of the house
I
out
saw
there
that.
right
It's an
now.
awesome piece. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you'll see that selling for that range. That has become more common with those background pieces.
Yeah. I mean, they're rarer and they're so iconic. Like,
Oh yeah.
we have a drawing of I don't have it up for sale, but we have a drawing of the nuclear power plant. And,
Sure.
it's a setup shot when you go to
Yeah.
see Mr. Burns.
Awesome pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is amazing. Wow. We've been going for well over an hour here. I
Oh,
could probably go
okay.
for another 3 or 4.
I know,
But
I could too. I mean, I just love the stuff.
this is so cool. This doesn't help my addiction. I'm looking
I
online
know.
too often.
You're
It
not
just
helping mine either, to be honest. Like doing this got me all fired up. You had me go to storage and pull pieces, and I'm like, oh, I
sells
love this.
anonymous. This is what it's turning
Yeah,
into.
yeah, yes. Now I want more, and So
One
thank
day.
you, and you've done a terrible thing to me.
Oh man, it's just the way things go. But one day I'm still holding out that hope I'll find a folder in the random and someone's not going to know they have it. The best thing I've ever found at a garage sale was a Nintendo 64, and it had like 7 or 8 games, including GoldenEye, 4 controllers
Ooh,
for $20. And I'm thinking, if I can do that with animation cells, find a box of something they don't know what they have, I'll be the happiest boy in the world.
yeah. You at some point maybe you should come out here and go to estate sales. I haven't done them, but again, it's existed. Like there are people out here who suddenly show up with boxes, and
Yeah.
usually I get it secondhand because they've found it. But it'll happen. It'll happen.
Keep an eye out. Well, I know they did. St. Louis is famous for Voltron, so the local television operator here, um, KPLR was the call letters, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but essentially he's like, I want to create something, so I'm just going to buy some random series from Japan, and then we'll just redub it for our own purposes. And Voltron became this huge hit, but it all
Well,
started here in St. Louis. And I thought maybe I'll get lucky and there'll be some
yeah.
animation art for Voltron out there. And this is the place you would find it.
I didn't know that's how it. I loved that as a kid. That and Battle of the Planets. I didn't know that it started there. So you need to go to the basement of the studio and like root around.
That would be it. Maybe I should reach out to them and say, hey, what do you got available? Just like every radio station, there's like archives of tapes they've never listened to. And I've done a lot of archiving our radio station's history just because there's so many cool things there. And it's just fascinating to see it. And I'm sure they got the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, one of your other folks mentioned this in the podcast is not being afraid to reach out. I mean, that's how I've gotten some early things as a collector is, and a lot of collectors on the Facebook groups, you hear them doing this, is that reaching out personally to people. I mean, these folks love to hear that their art was appreciated.
Yeah.
And so like when I spoke to Tom Yohe, I didn't ask for artwork, but he gave it to me. And so, maybe that's a way to get some of the things that you're looking for. Look up the people who did Recess.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just, if anything, I'm sure there's some good stories behind it.
Yeah, I mean that's the great thing is talking to people. Like I've said, when I talk to animators and things, to hear their stories uh, is just fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, this has been great. This has been a lot of fun. I got to
Yeah,
say, and your website, charlescottgallery.com, anyone that may have watched the video this far, and, looking at the analytics for these videos, the retention rate's like through the roof. People
good.
watch
That's
these things.
great. And I always meant to do videos myself. I keep meaning to do like how to mat, how to preserve. So I'm glad you're doing it, and I appreciate it. So thank you for having me on. It's been so fun.
Yeah, I think for like, I think about my own habits when I've done enough looking online, like search engine stuff for animation cells. I'll go to YouTube and I realized there just really wasn't
Oh,
enough like content, because I'd watch a couple videos and I'm like, well, I think I've seen everything now.
yeah.
So this will be good, because I'm sure there's other cell collectors that'll randomly stumble upon this in the future at some point and really learn something new and just enjoy the conversation. So I'm so happy that you took this hour plus time with me here today. Charles, thank you so much.
Absolutely. It was a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
Big thank you again to Charles, charlesscottgallery.com. I have his video in his website up on my side computer right here, charlesscottgallery.com. An awful lot of things to look at and enjoy, and I think I'm going to be browsing that later today. Wow, I could have gone another hour and a half with him or even longer, but he has such great insights and information. I think it's going to help a lot of cell collectors like myself that just likes to learn and talk about this sort of thing. So continue to watch for more future videos on this video channel. I'm Ryan Recker, at Ryan Recker on Twitter if you want to reach out to me on there, or here on YouTube. Places like that seem to always work. We'll talk to you soon.